Minister, just a couple of brief comments and questions. Minister, first of all, can I say on behalf of the committee we want to thank you for the changes that you've made in terms of the carers allowance and particularly the reforms in relation to the community employment schemes. These are issues that the committee has raised directly with you. And there are a significant number of vacancies within the community employment schemes at the moment, up to 2,000 vacancies. So I think it is important that we try and get the participation rates up, and a small bit of flexibility, I believe, will make a big difference there. Overall, Minister, you now are spending over €1 in 4 of every euro that's been allocated by government. It's a significant tranche of funding that's going directly through your department. €58,000 every single minute being spent by your department, which is a substantial amount of money, and that leaves a huge responsibility on us as a committee to monitor the spending of that money. Now, I know members earlier on raised questions regarding trying to get people back to work. And I think it is imperative, Minister, that we actually deal with some of the barriers that are forcing people to remain in low-paid employment or to remain on the live register and not take up employment. You have the issues in relation to tax and PRSI, where if people work additional hours, they're actually financially worse off as a result of it. They have to be eradicated out of the system. Our housing income thresholds have not increased in a decade, while house prices have more than doubled in the same period. And they are very black and white cut-offs, where people go €1 over the income threshold and end out in losing their housing support and being removed from the housing list. That is completely unacceptable. The objective has to be, of all our COVID supports, should be about trying to keep the connection with work, trying to keep people in work. And look, this is not something I'm saying now. I said this in advance of the pandemic unemployment payment coming in. I believe that we should have resourced more the employment wage subsidy scheme and put the priority onto that. The decision was made to introduce the PUP, and that's the payment that is in place at the moment. But if I can, seeing as we are here talking today on the 1st of December, focus on the employment wage subsidy scheme for a minute. As you know, the rates are being reduced from today. And you know, as a former enterprise minister, you know firsthand how vital that support has been to small local businesses over the pandemic to date. It has been a vital support to them to keep their doors open, to keep employees on their books, and hopefully be able to trade out of this pandemic. And they're the backbone of the economy in my own constituency across Roscommon and Galway, in your own constituency, Minister. They are the bulk of the driving force behind our local economies. But some of these sectors are being absolutely crucified at the moment. Hospitality is one, but there are others there. And yes, you're correct, they are being allowed under the government restrictions to remain open, to continue to trade. But on the same time, we have government openly advising people not to go into these businesses, not to actually trade with them, to stay away from the businesses. So on one hand, yes, the doors are remaining open. We're not closing those doors, but we are issuing advice to them to minimise the engagement with those particular businesses. So my question to you is, what alternative supports are being put in place for those specific businesses, where we have the Chief Medical Officer, where we have the government advising people to stay away from them while keeping the doors open, because it is putting a huge financial strain on those particular businesses? Can I ask you, Minister, has consideration been given to the possibility of the Christmas bonus being included in the ordinary estimate for the department, rather than going through this charade every year where we bring in the Christmas bonus on the run-in to Christmas? I think it would lead to a more transparent estimate and provide reassurance to the public in the early part of the year, rather than having to wait for the bonus to come on the eve of Christmas. If you could, Minister, in terms of the Social Insurance Fund requirements, give us an indication maybe of what you anticipated as a department in terms of the near future running of the Social Insurance Fund, based on where we are in terms of COVID and the projections that you have in relation to that. Also, on the issue of the Social Insurance Fund, and I suppose the last 18 months has proven the volatility that there can be there in the Social Insurance Fund, particularly with working age payments. As you know, the Pension Commission has made a recommendation that the state pension element of the Social Insurance Fund should be accounted for separately. As you know, it's far more predictable in terms of the demands that's put on the pension element of the Social Insurance Fund, and to provide that element of transparency, that the pension element of the Social Insurance Fund should be accounted for separately, and are measures being taken in the department to implement that in the short term. Just finally, Minister, and I know it's an issue that we'll be returning to in the new year, but as we are dealing with the estimate here today, I want to raise the issue of departmental performance targets. As you know, those targets are set by the management board of the department, but we as a committee feel that we should have a role in engaging with the management board on those particular targets. For example, control measures, instead of measuring the target savings and the percentage of repayments that are made, that should be about the number of reviews that are actually being performed, which would negate the need to actually recover money in the first instance. So it shouldn't be about recovering money, it should be about minimising the overpayments in the first instance, which is far cheaper for the department, but also creates far less hardship for recipients. Also, as you know, the target measurements for appeals and pathways to work have been removed from those performance measurements. We believe that they should be reintroduced, and that there should be a mechanism to measure those gaining in sustainable employment within the performance targets set by the department, so that it actually negates the need for the department to provide top-up payments like the working family payment, and that, you know, tweaking some of the performance targets could bring about far better deliverables for the department and provide a greater level of transparency for the public, particularly now when this department is spending in excess of €1 in every €4 that has actually been allocated by government. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Cahir. Look, just in terms of the timelines for appeals, I get regular reports on the appeals, and the timeline has actually been coming down, and I'll be bringing through legislation as part of the Social Welfare Bill to appoint a deputy appeals officer to assist. The way the legislation was set up, there was only one person could do this work, so I'm hoping to change it so that they'll be able to get I'm bringing it through the Social Welfare Bill, so I'll be able to appoint a deputy officer. So that'll speed up the process as well for appeals. Now, the Christmas bonus, as you know, is not included in the department's original estimate, and it is a discretionary decision made by the government in the context of the budget process and available resources. And the level of payment can vary annually, and in fact, it was not paid at all in the period 2009 to 2013. and you know, it's something that is a discretionary payment. A decision to pay the bonus at budget time each year considers the overall fiscal position and the achievement of our overall fiscal targets. That's the way it has been, and I don't think there's any. Hopefully, we'll be in the position to keep paying it, but that's the reason. That's the reason behind it. You have you mentioned there about the CE schemes and the vacancies, and you know, with a labour market where there are shortages in terms of labour, it is more difficult to fill these schemes, and you can see that the numbers on the PUP are coming down, the numbers on the live register are coming down. So that's good news, because more people are getting back to work. And as you say, we do have to continue to look at the barriers to remaining on the live register, and that's why that we have the Pathways to Work, which we launched last year, and we're completing the consultation on early engagement roadmap for young people, for people with disabilities, and implementing this report. So these are all, there's a lot of things happening there in terms of trying to help people get back to work, whether it's upskilling, reskilling, and we have the work placement programme, and we have a number of different incentives to get people off the live register. And we'll continue to work hard at that because, you know, the best way to take people out of poverty is to help them get a job, and that's the most important thing. The tax and PRSI you mentioned there, well, that has been changed in the budget, and I was glad to see that we were able to make some changes to the tax bands, and it's important that work pays. And that's what we want to make sure it does, that when people go out to work, they're better off doing that, and we want to make sure they're rewarded for it. The housing income thresholds, again, you mentioned that's Department of Housing. But the problem with bans is when you go over it, and where is the cut-off point? And it's something that I've seen it, and as a TD, you know, people lose out on their SUSI grant because they're 4 or 5 or 10 euros over the limit, and it is very frustrating, and I know that. But at the same time, there has to be some cut off point, and I know you'll understand that too, Deputy. The EWIS. Yes, that is a support that's there. The Minister for Finance has said that he will keep it under review and that he will monitor it closely as you know, in the weeks ahead. In terms of ourselves, there is the short-term working payment, where if people can only work 3 days, they can collect, they can get their payment for the other 2 days. I am a big supporter of the wage subsidy scheme. I think that's the way to go. When I was in business, I think that the right way to do it is to try and keep that connection between the employer and the employee. So the EWIS remains open, albeit at a reduced rate, but it has been a very, very successful support to businesses. And I know many businesses have said to me, without the EWIS, their doors would have been closed. The Social Insurance Fund, we do expect the Social Insurance Fund to return to surplus next year, and the Pensions Commission examined the issue of a separate fund for pensions. And I do understand that the Commission on Welfare and Taxation, they're also examining this issue and will engage with the department on that. Now, wait, we see. I think is that most of the questions you asked me. Sorry, Deputy. I think oh no, wait a minute. Yeah, I think I've covered most of them there in terms of what you said to me there. Yep. Is that okay?
Thank you, Minister, and thank you for your time this morning. The just one final point that I will make, and that is that, you know, today the employment wage subsidy scheme is being reduced. And we have all this week, you know, government ministers and the health advisors to the government publicly discouraging people from engaging with some of these businesses. And I think there is a contradiction there that needs to be acknowledged. And we need to look carefully at, ensuring that we can try and maintain as many people as possible in direct employment and keeping that connection with the employer. So I leave that with you. Can I thank you, Minister?
Sorry, Chairman.
Yes.
Just come in there. We're not discouraging people, but we're telling people to try and reduce their social contact. We're asking them to be aware that self-responsibility, and I do know that people continue to. To use a number. I know there's some things may have been cancelled, but generally speaking, if you're in a restaurant and you abide by the guidelines and be careful and be aware that there's no reason why it's not safe to be there.
We'll have this debate again, Minister, but I can tell you that there are quite a lot of hospitality businesses who spent all of last week dealing with phone calls with people ringing up, cancelling bookings, a substantial amount of the time last week, and this week those supports are being reduced. That's the point I'm making, but we'll debate it again. Can I thank you, Minister, for your time this morning? That concludes our consideration of vote 37 for the Department of Social Protection, a further revised estimate. In accordance with Standing Order 101, a message to that effect will be sent to the Clerk of the Dáil. Oireachtas buchas a gáilh don Ara Humphreys agus a rinne a gún of don cuista iniu. Thank you, Minister, for being with us here this morning and for the assistance that both you and your officials have provided to the committee today. The Select Committee is now adjourned. Sin a day.